If I just have 8 minutes, I can do 30 squats and I can do this and that. It doesn't work like that with writing. You need this kind of daydreaming time where you let your mind wander. My name is Emma Gourlay. I have two books out with HarperCollins, Kip of the Mountain and Kip of the Karoo. They are out now. My hero is a little girl, and she's grown up on the back of Table Mountain, which is not the good side, it's the bad side, and that actually is in real life where my family is from. And she finds a magical creature, and she chooses hope, not hate, in a really divided world, because I've set my story in 1985, which in South Africa was a really difficult time for people who were not white. She lives with her father, but he's really distracted. So this loneliness she feels is not just because of what's happening at school, but because she feels, yeah, neglected and avoided at home. So when she finds this magical creature while she's walking through this dark forest, it changes everything. He is suddenly her friend, this magical creature who she calls Buffle. But of course, this devastating thing happens that he is taken away from her. He's kidnapped. And so part of the next part of the book is she's got to get Buffle. But how is she going to get him? Because she has lived this life of loneliness. Her dad doesn't help her. She doesn't have friends. So she has to have this, and I love this term that's coming more and more into kids' adventures. She has to have this found family, this chosen family of a boy at school who she's not really sure about, as a friend, and another grandfather character who just, oh my gosh, everyone loves him. He's beloved, and who helps her on her journey. So there's this found family that she gathers around her in order to get back this magical creature that is also her friend. She chooses hope because she does live in a divided world, and she's actually not really aware of how the extent of this division. So for example, there's a beach, and it's a real beach. It's called Boulders Beach. And when my dad was growing up in Cape Town, it was whites only, and he was not allowed to swim there. And Kip thinks, oh, when I'm 12, I'll be able to swim there. And her friend Troy has to tell her, well, actually, it's not an age thing. It's a color of your skin thing. And it's only when, well, we'll never be able to swim there. And it's devastating for her because there are penguins there. There are these amazing boulders that reach out of this turquoise water. I mean, I've been there. It's stunning. And I've only been there because I went in, 98, 99, that summer. My dad took me over, and it was astonishing, of course, for him to see me swim at this beach where he had not been allowed to be. Not even allowed to step on the sand, let alone go into the water, let alone swim with the penguins. So all this stuff that Kip thinks, oh, she just has to be old enough to do it. As so many kids, you think about the average childhood, it's like, oh, you have to be old enough to sit in the front of the car, or old enough to buy a bike, or go to a certain class. And Kip actually, and that's why it's so good, because really she's our POV as we turn the pages. We're discovering how unfair this world is as well. There really was this group of cowboys called the Griqua, and they roamed the Karoo. Now, the Karoo is a real desert that sits behind Table Mountain, and there are amazing photos. Like, gosh, if I'd written a non-fiction book, I would have included them. There are amazing photos of these gorgeous black faces with cowboy hats riding horses, and it's very much part of this kind of Wild West culture. And we've seen it erased time and time again, even in America, in Australia, that black cowboys did exist. So that was a very important thing for me to then tell that story, and I could not have done that in the first book. I mean, when you're a children's author, you've got a word limit of 40,000 words. You have to focus. And I don't want to take people on too many detours and diversions. The way I tell a story, sure, I have quirky moments and I have a laugh, but I think the hero needs to be on this, fairly clear journey where the reader really wants to come along. So I needed two books commercially, and then also, I think, for the sake of storytelling and the history I wanted to present. We do talk about representation a lot in publishing, and it really does mean something in my book, because not only is the character, not only is the hero someone who looks a little different, someone who we didn't see in books, in children's literature in the 70s and 80s, and I know that because that's how I grew up. And I have had people tell me and point to that cover kids and mums and dads and guardians and say, I don't see faces like that. I didn't see faces like that everywhere. And as much as I love, come on, I grew up with the classic stuff and I still love the classic stuff. Wind in the Willows, Anne of Green Gables, The Secret Garden, but faces like Kip, faces like Granddaddy Bristol, faces like Troy, her friend, with bigger lips, with that color of skin that we, it's neither black, it's neither white, it's in between. And I make that clear that Kip has a black dad and a white mum. And yeah, for me, representation means that it's not necessarily just fitting into a clear-cut box, all those boxes that we have read in other pieces of children's literature. I write very early in the morning, before my child wakes up. That has changed because I wrote Keep the Mountain between the hours of 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. because that was what my life was then. I was caring for someone who was really sick. And when they fell asleep, it was finally my time, and the rest of the world just washed away and I could just focus on that. And that's why I actually, when people talk about the time to write and succeeding at life and you have to be part of the 5 a.m. club and stuff to really make it. And I'm like, come on, I wrote this book like in owl hours. It was a nightly creature of a book. And I think the most important thing is to write and finding that time to write for sure. Like, I hate that saying again, we all have the same hours in a day. Well, no, it depends on what kind of responsibilities you have as well. And fine, I'm a mum now, but before that I was a carer. I was a lot of things that did intrude upon my writing. And so I've always had to find those pockets of time. It's really important. I mean, the one thing I say, and some people of course ask me, where do you find time? How do I find time? I think that this kind of daydreaming part is so important with writing. You can't actually go, when it comes to fitness, you might read, okay, if I just have 8 minutes, I can do, 30 squats and I can do this and that. It doesn't work like that with writing. You need this kind of daydreaming time where you let your mind wander, and you could get 280 words down in an hour, or you could get a little bit more, or you could fix a sentence or a paragraph. And it's about going, I mean, look, hey, that's how I work. The snatches of time don't work. I have to have a dreamy couple hours to really get something good down. Ooh. What was the biggest writing disaster you've had? Just believing everyone when they said I would be a lawyer and going to law school really blindly and just not really thinking about it, seeing a couple of movies where lawyers look cool. And we are writing in a political landscape, and I think some people think just the act of producing a book is an act of politics. I think I would go a lot further and say, well, what are you trying to say? And are we entertaining people, or are we delivering a message? And I think with children's literature, I hate issue books. Absolutely hate them. Kids know if they're being just, hit over the head with something, oh, you have to believe this, or this is what we're telling you to believe. No way. So that's why, and someone asked me this the other day, and particularly with a lot of African literature, magical realism is used. And I think that's a way of stepping outside the restraints that the culture has imposed on you, and particularly, of course, during apartheid, not being allowed to go to certain places, not being allowed to think a certain way, or, physically not being able to use a toilet or a water fountain because that was whites only. You needed a bit of magic in your day. And that's why I would say my culture is incredibly imaginative, full of great storytellers. And I think I have a bit of politics on the page, absolutely. But I think that magic and goofiness and falling in love with this beloved grandfather is more important to me when I'm writing a kid's story. I remember the first thing I ever wrote, and it was, I think my dad had to help me write it down, but he took me to Western Samoa, my sister and I. It was meant to be just for a week or something. My aunt was over there as a librarian, and it turned into I think almost 2 months, maybe more. Anyway, I remember being very upset on the plane because I was really into Care Bears. And I was really upset that I couldn't see these Care Bears floating in the clouds with me. And I wrote a little something about that. I remember Dad had to help me. And I don't think he ever said, and that's probably why. I think he never said that they maybe didn't exist. Like perhaps we just hadn't seen them that day. So for me, that love of magic has always been there. But I won't say, I'd say that story was quite clouded by disappointment as well. I mean, that sounds so spoiled, doesn't it? You're on a plane, I was 7, and I was disappointed I couldn't see Care Bears out the window. But yeah, I remember writing about that. I love reading nonfiction. I do. I like reading stories about disastrous things like slavery and colonialism. And then I love reading just hilarious stuff. Like one of my favorite books, and I went to his book signing 15 years ago, Sean McAuliffe. I like people who have this, I don't know if I like irreverent, because sometimes that sounds like carelessness. A kind of a bonkers sense of humor, a hilarious take on things. And yeah, wow, Sean McAuliffe's just a genius. So I like reading hilarious, goofy stuff. And then I like reading really ghastly, serious stuff that very much happened. And I would say the bubbles of that come through my writing. And here we are. So when I was a kid, the classics, very English classics, a lot of fairy tales, which surprisingly, and people are always like, what? No way. But there are deer. There are deer and squirrels in the forests of Constantianek where my books are set. And so even for me writing, it has that kind of folkloric, that fairy tale quality. So that was very much an influence as I was growing up. And I always wanted to write a kind of a fairy tale in Africa. But I would say the first time I really felt seen and read someone saying the kind of things I thought in my head, but I was kind of maybe too ashamed to say. It was like, am I allowed to say that? Am I allowed to think that? It was when I was reading Michelle de Kretzer, Questions of Travel. And some of the stuff in there spoke to me. And I know that sounds weird because I've obviously written the kids' book, but she has such a fierce, such a anti-colonial take on things that really spoke to me and really made me think, well, I can put pen to paper and I can write something, obviously at a child appropriate level, because that's as far as my talent extends. But I can write something that at least honors those thoughts I'm already having. But also, obviously, to see someone that talented to put them down on paper, it was a huge thing for me. What is next for me? Everyone really loves the grandfather character. His name is Granddaddy Bristol, and he's the grandfather I do wish I'd had. And I don't say that to dismiss the grandfathers I had, because I had really good grandfathers. I had an opa on my Dutch side, and I had a pa on my South African side, but they were both really wounded men. And I always felt like when they were grandfathers, they couldn't love as much as they wanted to. They were both scarred by war, because I do call apartheid a war. But my opa fought in the Second World War, was in a prisoner camp, all of that horrible stuff. And I guess what I wanted to put down on paper with Granddaddy Bristol was this grandfather that was so full of love, but obviously had lived, because he's a sailor and he's been through some stuff, right? But he has this expansive heart, and you see it coming through the page. And the number of people who have said, oh, I wish that was my grandfather, or I want to hear more about him. So yes, I have written quite a bit from his perspective as a little kid, and that helped me shape his character through the first 2 books. But it obviously has just become so, I am drawn to him as well. And there's now a prequel in the works of a 3rd book. That will be, Granddaddy Bristol. But I do have a couple other projects that I'm fascinated by. And even before I got published, like before I even got signed, I had this kind of bank of stuff that I was like, always working on. And so I've got a few things. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a joy. It's been, wonderful. And also just, it serves me well to kind of gather my thoughts. It's been a great thought gathering day as well. Thank you.